show, and we've got some exciting things to talk about tonight. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead on and I'm going to introduce our guest tonight, as well as my co-host, plus his own show host itself. But immediately sitting next to me, I have Gregory Harrison. He is the Central Texas Bureau Chief of Empowered Texans, and he covers local government and spending issues affecting Austin, San Antonio, and surrounding areas in Central Texas. Greg grew up in Houston, Texas, and he attended, after graduating from Taylor High School, he went to University of Texas here in Austin. He earned his BA, his bachelor's degree in government, and when he's not focusing on politics, he enjoys hunting, fishing, motorcycling, and firing up the grill with a few friends. You a tailgater?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And sitting right next to Greg is Karen Flanagan. She's born and raised in Austin. All right, Austin. Go, girl. She graduated from Texas A&M, and she has a bachelor's in
Masters, yeah, of agriculture.
in food science and technology, and she's a registered dietitian. And also, Karen has a small farm in North Austin. She's got some chickens and bees and a large unkept garden. You have to teach me some of those skills. And next to her, we have John Goldstone. He's a local attorney. John grew up on the East Coast in Connecticut and near New York. He attended Rice University, and he received his bachelor's in political science and economics. And, whoo, John's got a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. But after a 5-year hiatus, he went to law school at the University of Texas, and he spent several years at Aiken Gump, a large international law firm. He's now a solo practitioner, which gives him the time necessary to be informed, for lack of better term, he says. He's a taxpayer advocate, and we all need taxpayer advocates. So he feels strongly, very strongly, about transparency when our elected officials borrow money to be repaid by all of us. We sure do need to know what they're doing. The taxpayers, owners, renters, and voters. And last but not least is Michael Lee, my co-host, but Mike is also the host of his own show, Real Talk. So here we have it. We're going to get started. We're going to jump in. John, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about some things about the $720 million bond that we have to deal with during this election.
Thank you, Marilyn. I'm John Goldstone, as you said, and I'm a taxpayer advocate. Really appreciate this opportunity because we can go in depth way beyond what we normally are able to do. We normally have 1 minute, 2 minutes, or 3 minutes, and luckily we have an hour here. We're about to borrow, all of us, a huge amount of money, $720 million. If we are confused about anything important having to do with this loan, we must vote no. If it turns out that we are not getting what we think we were promised, or if this is actually a make-it-pretty bond, we must vote no. If we find intentional or grossly incompetent statements by our officials, mayor, city council members, city materials, or city staff, we must vote no. So as we go through our materials and we find that we, ourselves, are confused, remember, it is not my duty or our duty to prove to you that you must vote no. It is the city's obligation and duty to clear up any confusion, issue press releases, call you back, and help you to understand enough that you can vote yes. This is what I told people this past weekend at ACL or in the pedicabs. Go look for yourself and see if you can figure this stuff out. If you cannot figure it out and get answers, you must vote no. Now tonight we're going to follow an outline. It'll be helpful. Karen is going to go through some specifics on the corridors. Gregory is going to add some items and comment as appropriate. And I'm going to go through a detailed analysis, it potentially will be boring, of several big, bad lies as to the city's numbers. So we've got this whiteboard over here. I don't know if you guys can see it. In any event, on the whiteboard we have that's a little bit glary. It has a big $56 on it, which equals lie. I think that glare is not going to work. I'll just tell you what it says. It says $56 equals lie. It says 14 miles of new lanes, ... 15 miles of car lanes gone. 20 miles of center turn lanes, those are called chicken lanes to some people. Those are going to be gone. And underneath it, it says deceptive. I think it's most important that we let Karen relate her experiences in walking the corridors and actually talking to the businesses about the plans that the city has to get cars in and out of their businesses in an efficient manner. Now, we all realize that when you sign a commercial lease, you are always at risk of construction occurring on the street next to your business. However, it is the net result of this mobility bond plan's no new lanes, no more left-turn chicken lanes, they will be replaced with medians, consolidation of driveways, and slowing speed limits that has most alarmed businesses that Karen and other smart corridor block walkers have interviewed. So Karen, if you'd like to kind of just give us some of your experiences.
Sure. Being from North Austin, I frequently rode my bike down Burnett Road and Shoal Creek and all that kind of stuff. So I was very familiar with the businesses that were going to be affected by this. And honestly, when I saw this, I kind of stopped after I read about smart corridors, and I started looking into it a little bit more. I wasn't involved with any groups or anything, and started reading about smart corridors and what it was going to do. And the more I read, I immediately thought, this is going to kill those people that I grew up with. I mean, I went to Top Notch. I went to, there's the lighting store on Burnett Road, and, you know, Lucy Reed School's right there. I went to grade school there. So all of these things were going to be impacted. So I thought, I'm going to go see what they think. And I did. I spent 9 hours on Burnett Road. I've spent 3.5 hours on South Lamar, and all I did was just go in and visit with the neighbors. I went in, I told them what was going on. I said, have y'all heard of the proposed bond coming up? And only one person told me yes, and he said, but I heard about it yesterday. And he had gone to a meeting where the mayor was speaking, and the mayor brought this up, and he said, Karen, I wish you had been there, you know, come see me last week, because then I could have asked him questions. But nobody knew what was coming. Nobody knew that the median was going to be, or the turn lane was going to be replaced with a median. And not just a median, a raised median. There's going to be utilities going through there, so think about the trenching that's going to go along. We're going to have planters that we're going to be taking care of. And it just, I mean, it literally blindsided everybody. And as I kept telling them what was going to happen here, their eyes just started getting wider. I had one guy said, I just signed a 5-year lease. And it's, you know, these types of things should be presented to them. It's just out of respect that you do that. So when I started hearing this, I immediately went on the Vote No mission, and I've really taken hold of that. And just for the sake of these small businesses, we are going to put people out of business and their employees out of business. And it's not fair. What I see this doing, and I've read, this is all put out by the city. This is a 129-page report about Burnett Road in North Lamar only, okay? This is this. I've gleaned this. This one's mine. I've touched on airport, but on Burnett Road, what I noticed is very little input. They had 4 meetings in September of 2011 and October of 2011. This was before we elected 10-1, okay? So y'all need to remember that 10-1 was supposed to give us representation. This stuff was made before we had a new council set. So just keep that in mind too. So there is not representation here. There were 4 meetings for a Burnett Road proposal. A total of 36 people attended all 4 of those meetings. And if you call that representation, I think that's sick. It's pathetic. They had 30 questionnaires returned. We're talking people's livelihood is at stake here. And to me, I find that disgusting. I really do. None of them were reaching out to the businesses. They marketed to the schools. They marketed to the community centers there and stuff. And I'm not saying that those people didn't have good input. We needed a lot more than what it's going to do to the people that are affected by this most. So other things, what else can I add?
That was amazing.
Okay.
John has a...
Yeah, if we maybe just, were there a couple of any individual stories of some of those businesses, rather you don't have to name their names, obviously.
Yeah,
and also, if you had noticed in the, we have some links in some of these documents, but the Roger Falk debate with the mayor had been invited by Roger several times, and when he debated the chamber, he had invited the chamber representative to accompany him on the corridors. So maybe you can tell us how many of the people that you talked to had talked to either a chamber person or the mayor.
You know, that's funny because the mayor did say that he was walking the corridors. Well, maybe he's walking the corridors, but he's not going into these businesses. Not one person has been approached by the Chamber of Commerce. They've not even received a leaflet. One guy at a car dealership showed me a door hanger, and I said, "Oh, did they leave that here?" I said, "They're catching up with us." And he said, "No, this was at home." And I said, "Oh," and he lives in far South Austin, and his business is over on Burnett Road. And I said, "That's interesting," but nothing has gone out to these businesses. And honestly, yeah, it takes time. Yes. I'm volunteering this. This is important enough to me that I'm willing to give time to go out and see these people. So, but I mean, come on, we've got plenty of city staff that can be going and can be asking for input and all that stuff. One other thing that's going to be going on Burnett Road, let me just give you some specifics, because it really is telling. Each mile now of Burnett Road has about 46 interferences, either from a driveway or from another street or whatever. That's going to be reduced to 22. So we've got businesses that now have their own driveway, or they might have a driveway, you know, 2 of them if they've got a drive-through or something. That's going to be reduced down to 1, or it might be they get to share it with 3 of their neighbors. Again, absolutely no input on this from the city. So they literally are being blindsided. But, you know, the one thing that I was saying, just the construction time alone, the trenching in the streets, just the physical barriers that are going to keep people from going to businesses, and people are going to say it's not worth it. It's going to be a lot of effort.
I had a basic question about the entire plan. You're saying this $720 million bond was conceived with the old council structure, 6-1, not 10.
Exactly.
What input did 10-1 have on it? Just approve it?
I know District 6, which is where I am, they got some improvements for for Anderson Mill, but other than that, I mean, or Houston's area got nothing. Nothing.
Okay.
I don't think there was much.
Now, I sit on the African American Resource Advisory Commission, so we hear a lot of stuff. And there was a complaint, not only that nothing was done on the east side, really, but that the process was not inclusive. And it kind of relates to, you said there were 36 people in 4 different meetings?
Yeah.
So who came up with this plan?
Well,
That's a great question. I don't know where it appeared. I started seeing it in June. I was actually out of the country, and I saw the thing happening. I mean, it was probably all of the people sitting in traffic that were yelling to call in radio shows, and were calling their council members going, "I am stuck in traffic."
I don't know who's doing this stuff.
Well, but I mean, kind of, this gets to one of our main points in that the main reason that we were doing this bond in the beginning was because of roads. And I'll speak to this later, but this is not called a road bond. It's called a mobility bond. And so the question is, who answered the surveys that went out? Because surveys went out. Well, I said I like bike lanes, because I do like bike lanes. But people sitting in traffic didn't have time to answer the survey. So the idea that they went out and got some surveys and did a few questionnaires and a few meetings, I mean, they tried, but they really didn't get an inclusive amount of people, or they wouldn't have put a net negative number of new car lanes into this plan.
Now, I understand that the usual bond process takes about 18 months. This one took 6.
well, they're just rubber stamping what was given them.
That's why I asked the question, who gave them what?
Well, I mean, they've
I'm just
responded.
curious.
They've responded. I just got this today. I'm in that nextdoor.com for neighborhoods around here, and I just got that now we have a link to austintexas.gov/2016 bond. It's a bond voter information brochure. So this has just come out. And on page 6, at the bottom of page 6, it says, implementation of the program shall emphasize making corridors livable, walkable, safe, and transit supportive, and aligned with the principles and metrics of the Imagine Austin Comprehensive Plan, with the goals, now this is telling, the goals of reducing vehicle miles traveled, increasing transit ridership, and non-vehicular trips, and promoting healthy, equitable, and complete communities. So their goal here is to have livable spaces above retail, like we're seeing in the Domain and seeing on parts of North Lamar, with parking somewhere but not visible. And you have your sidewalks, you have your bike lanes, you have your traffic. So we are grooming, literally what we're doing is we are paying for the infrastructure for developers to come in and take over these areas, parts of town. That's what I see in this. I see this a grooming project at our expense. And my thing is, if you want it to happen, you pay for it. I don't care to pay for it.
For the developers, for the developers
That's
end
use
of
the
it.
pack. You look,
Yeah, the developers are going to be the ones who brought the bond, and basically they help design it and bring all the projects to city council and say, we need to do the X, X, and X, and do all these different
I
projects.
still want names.
Well, and two, you know, for many years, there's been so many, like, different corridor planning meetings. There've been different Austin planning meetings, and I wouldn't be surprised if they hadn't just put all these together from these different planning meetings. I mean, I went to a couple of them that was downtown, and they said, how do you want to see your city? Do you want to see this? You want to see that? And I understand what you're talking about, the deception. I mean, they can offer you one thing, but it's totally separate, it's different, and they never tell you where the money is going to come from.
Is
You
it, wouldn't this negatively impact gentrification?
Well,
this, if it goes through,
Yes, if it were approved.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Because just to touch back on what you were saying, a lot of these businesses had very little input and had very little outreach done to inform them of this entire project. I think, not to sound too paranoid here, but I think a large part of this is the developers who are pushing the bond, these construction companies, these vendors, et cetera, who stand to benefit and build a bunch of these projects, have their eye on some of the real estate that a lot of these small businesses are currently occupying. A lot of these guys operate with on very low margins. They're small business owners just trying to put food on the table. And when you tear up the roads, you do all these massive construction projects and really interrupt the flow of traffic in front of their businesses, which is extremely important to these guys. Like I said, very small margins here. They're more likely than a lot of others to just go under and have to sell their property. And who do you think is going to be buying that up as soon as it's for sale? So, and not to be a little too conspiratorial, but I think that's a feature rather than a glitch.
Well, and you had asked Mike, what is the purpose behind this, doing it in 6 months instead of 18? I mean, that's a big thing that Councilmember Houston, that was one of the reasons why she voted against it. And I have a lot of arguments that it's either intrigue or incompetence. But when you see a 10-1, and I'll talk about this in my little portion of the presentation, we are seeing the example of the worst part of 10-1. You give a little over here, 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 and
nothing to the east.
Well, and that's about the only one that didn't get something, because it seemed like everybody got something. And that is, again, these people sitting in their cars saying, we have to do something, and we have to do something now. But as Roger Fox said in his debate with the mayor, yeah, but we don't have to do something stupid that's not done with a scalpel precision-like
Right.
efficient plan. And that's not what that is. But again, you're asking why he did it so quickly. Why did it get pushed so quickly? I don't think we really know the answer to that, except the fact that people were clamoring, you've got to do something. And, that's what you'll hear the mayor saying over and over again. We have to do something, and we've got to start now. And this is, as you will mention soon, this is only actually a down payment. This is not like the $720 million is going to build all of these smart corridors or do all of the improvements that are intimated or alluded to, or they're kind of saying to you, this is going to cure your traffic problem or your mobility problem. So potentially, Karen, can you go ahead and talk about that, the dollars in the corridors and what the studies actually say?
well, there's $482 million allotted for the smart corridors. And actually, the numbers that we've seen, it would build out, if they build out everything the way that they've planned, it's going to be between $1.5 billion and $1.7 billion. So it's quite a bit more than what they've talked about. One thing too, I mean, you alluded to people being stuck in traffic and all that kind of stuff. I think you all have reference to the Honest Transportation Solutions website. I hope that's part of this program tonight. But it's a really good website just to get another side of the story. But there's a map on there, and I've got it here. What they did is they looked at satellite images to see where people were in traffic and all that kind of stuff. Go to that website and look at the map portion of this. It's going to show where we've got satellite imaging of where traffic is in the city. And then if you look in the green, there's a green section on this, you'll see that that's the bond work. They're not overlapping at all. This has nothing to do with traffic congestion, solving. It's just, again, it's just grooming specific roads to get them ready for the next step.
Would you like to just, again, I have this on here so we can do it, the potential alternatives
yeah.
to the things that they have in plan, like 2 giant bike lanes and sidewalks on, on each side of these corridors.
Right. So Burnett Road is going to have this median that's going to have the utilities in it. It's going to have your road, and then it's going to have a bike lane that's not protected, okay? There's a stripe. So that, and then it's going to have some trees and all that kind of stuff and
it's
sidewalk.
mixing in bike traffic
Yes. Well, there's
automobile traffic?
that painting on the road supposed to keep the cars out of
Magic.
there. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. So it's not separate on Burnett Road. And I'm not familiar with how the other ones are going to do it, but I'm very clear on Burnett Road. The traffic and cars will be on the same type of roadway.
I drive Burnett Road all
Really?
the time, and it is one of the few
Really?
navigable roads in the city. It's my go-to for commuting, and it sounds like an absolute nightmare.
I mean, that traffic down Burnett Road is what, 45 to 55 miles an hour?
And you putting bikes
I mean,
next to
You-
cars?
It is fast, and you just, why would, I think before this show is over, we'll come up with another name, because it's certainly not a smart corridor. That's not a
Let
good
me
name.
just ask,
Complicated.
do y'all ride bikes? Because I rode 20 miles this weekend, and it was all in town. I started at Duval, rode down Breaker, went through the Walnut Creek. There's a great little urban trail that's part of this bond package. Again, if we split it out, I would have looked at this a little differently, but I'm not. I'm going to vote no because of the businesses. But so I'm trekking on my bike. I get to Lamar. Again, you hit on it. When that speed limit gets over 35, I'm sorry, I don't compete with a car. So I turned around and double backed and went through Walnut Creek Park, got back on the trail, and was able to get on a sidewalk or a safer bike path. So yes, there are plenty of things we can do. If you're on Cesar Chavez, you'll see that there's a bike lane. I guess it's Lance Armstrong. I don't think they changed the name, but it's 2 lanes. You can ride safely there at your own pace, and you are completely away from cars.
Right.
Burnett Road, what's wrong with riding Shoal Creek or Woodrow? That's when I need to go north-south that way, and I used to live on Wooten. I commuted down to Seton on bike. I never took Burnett Road. I rode on Woodrow, got to the hospital, took a shower, and, went on. But there are ways that we can let cars have their piece of land and bikes have their piece of land. Same thing, I live off of Duval now. We've got bike lanes. It's crazy because there's a bike lane and all of a sudden, poof, it goes away. I don't know what I'm supposed to do when I'm on my bike. I guess, and so what I do is I ride on the sidewalk. Again, I'm not going to compete with 40 miles an hour on a bike. So yes, there are things you can do. You can make them off of the road. You can make them wide enough to accompany both bikes and people. I mean, it's rare, down at the lake, and I run down there and cycle down there. There is a lot of traffic, but I rarely see a bike and a pedestrian crash. So there are definitely things that we can be doing for that.
Go ahead.
So the bond proposal in its present form is based on some estimates, not actual costs.
Right,
You're just guessing.
right.
They don't even have complete plans for all of the corridors. That is correct.
Okay.
And funding is questionable. I mean, if additional funding is required with other local taxing entities and pursue potential opportunities for grants. I mean, there's a lot of question marks here.
And
How they're going
maybes.
to pay for it and maybes.
So, and you and I had spoken, I drive on South First between the river and 71. And the idea that center lanes, you haven't mentioned yet safety, because safety is supposed to be one of the big things of this smart corridor. And you said you've got some numbers on,
Yeah,
on safety that is the reason behind a lot of these things. And especially getting rid of center turn lanes, okay, so that you can, the example being Matzo Rancho, when you're heading southbound on Lamar, you get into the center lane to make a left. There's actually 3 entrances into their parking lot, which would be gone. You would have to go up and pull a U-turn. But could you just talk a little bit about that safety and the numbers on the crashes that
Yeah, on
somehow is this huge issue?
Yeah, and again, the city's provided all of this. This is all online, so this is a hard copy of it. On Burnett Road, they did safety studies over 32 months, so that's 2 years and 8 months. There were 4, well, in that 32-month period, there were 4 accidents involving a pedestrian and 2 involving a bike. And I'm not saying that any accident is okay. 1 accident's bad. But the point is, in 2 years and 8 months, we only had 4 pedestrians involved and 2 bicycles. And, you know, they're claiming this is a safety issue. On North Lamar, 13 involved pedestrians, 2 involved bicycles. Again, not huge numbers. One thing that was interesting, alcohol and distracted driving, which has nothing to do with this. Those are all human issues that we're not going to be changing. We need to have better enforcement of laws and everything like that. I mean, having a bike lane isn't going to help somebody if you've got a drunk driver on the road or if you've got somebody that's distracted.
I mean, to me, it just makes no sense to have bikes and cars mixed.
Exactly.
Well, not on 2 congested roads anyway. Lamar and Burnett Road, I mean, my goodness.
Certainly
You
not
mean
one
with nothing
that
in
serves as a
between?
high-speed arterial.
No.
in the
It
ma-
is
in the
better. I
middle
ride
of
a
the city.
bike. I mean, if you look at East 12th Street, you know, they went ahead and this is what we're talking about. The idea that this stuff, that bike lanes are not going to be done, or roads are not going to be done, or bus turnouts are not going to be done, or sidewalks are not going to be built, is a false perception that's going on. There are bike lanes being built. On 12th Street, they got rid of the parking on 12th Street and put in bike lanes, okay? But they just went ahead and did that, and that's like a mile, you know? And so there are things being done in the regular budget and in past bond issues that are being done regularly. So when I run across these Bike Austin people and they go, but we need bike lanes, it's like, you are getting them. But is the cost, which I'm going to get to in a minute, is the cost justified for you to get these few extra bike lanes that you're going to get? I just want to point out, on that South First example, because the mayor has pointed out that any of these critics were do-nothing people.
Yeah.
We are just do nothing. We don't want to do anything. Well, if there's sufficient right-of-way on South First and you put in a center lane between 71 and the river, you are going to improve the lives of at least 1,000 people coming to work and going home. And so the idea that the center turn lanes are a problem, sure, on maybe some of them, or maybe, I don't know, we haven't seen those numbers. How are you going to go ahead and how long is your, I don't know what you call it, stacking lane? If you're going to only do U-turns to get to Matzel Rancho, how far back on the median do you have to build to get those cars out of the way? So that certainly hasn't been answered, and this particular alternative on some of the roads that maybe have a right-of-way already purchased. So when they're not even talking about the condemnation costs in these corridors. If you already have the right-of-way, then the idea of putting the sidewalk and bike lane off the road, like they have on Barton Springs and I think you said on Cesar Chavez, that is a potential alternative, very inexpensive alternative. And they're certainly not talking about those. So the idea that it's do nothing, we're not coming up with alternatives, that's a ludicrous statement.
Alternatives too could be, why aren't they encouraging carpooling in town? I lived in DC for a couple of years. We had HOV lanes. And, you know, I was never used to that. I ended up getting a ticket in one of them because I didn't know what I was in. But I moved. I went places. But I just think we are not hitting any ideas that could do something. I mean, encourage carpooling, encourage flexible hours.
Buy more buses?
Well, and buy smaller buses. We don't fill up some of the buses that we have currently out there. So get smaller ones, maybe make them be destination buses or something. I'd love to take one to the airport, just a direct airport line. So what about making streets that have a middle lane that can go both directions during peak traffic times? You know, those are done in other cities. They're done successfully. And again, none of this is hitting any of the ears that we talk to. And I know I've never been asked to come in and sit on a committee or anything like that with the city. So, and like Bike Austin, I did speak up against striping one of the roads that would have restricted parking in a neighborhood. And we were able to stop that from happening because the few bike riders that were on that lane were displacing 40 or 50 homeowners. And it's just disrespectful.
It is, but I really have a problem when you mess with major thoroughfares that go through. People take they go through the interior to stay off Mopac, to stay off 35. I mean, and then you want to come and the traffic is already backlogged already, and then for you to come and mess with that. I mean, Lamar I mean, it takes you from one end of the city to the other, but it keeps you from getting on 35. It keeps you from getting on Mopac. Why would you touch that?
Well, my belief looking at this whole thing is if they wanted to do anything meaningful about traffic solutions, they could do it piecemeal, cheaply, through the general budget. But if they did something like that, if they actually had any progress with it, they would lose their rhetorical scapegoat. So this is a rhetorically justified spending spree, in my view. And I think if they really want to do something meaningful, there are tons of easy solutions that they could be doing, like recalibrating traffic signals. That's something that's a no-brainer. I can't imagine anybody in the city that would be against us spending some money to recalibrate traffic signals to make them a little bit smarter. I can't tell you how many times I've been driving through Austin and I've hit a red light and there's traffic behind me, also stopped at this red light. There's somebody else across the street who's also stopped and nobody's moving. There's a green light for the lane with nobody in it, and it's because we don't have smart signals in Austin. And you could recalibrate that. You could do that piecemeal, just prioritize what the most congested intersections are, and spend a little bit of money here, spend a little bit of money there, and eventually you would alleviate a large part of our traffic congestion. But we don't do it. No, I think that it's. I think they just want to keep the justification for a massive spending project.
It appears to be that.
Yes.
Okay, so we've kind of gone through the corridor plans and some of the things in the specifics. I'd like to go ahead and go through the numbers. And
Okay,
this can
and I'll
potentially
check
get a
the
little
numbers
bit
with you a little
boring, and it's a little bit detailed, but that's just how it is when we're about to borrow money.
Well, John, so can you do this little breakdown here? So, and then break the money down. So a breakdown of November's mobility bonds include $101 million for regional projects. So you can break all this down for us. $482 million for corridor improvements, and I know you touched on that, Karen. $137 million for sidewalks, trails, and bike lanes. And then the best part is where the mayor says we would only have to pay an extra $5 a month to cover the cost of the bond package. Break that monies down for us, please.
Well, I actually can't break them down
Okay, but
as well as Roger or
okay.
Karen, but she has gone through the corridor plans. You can at least touch on some of the numbers of the overlapping jurisdiction that for some reason they have decided to try and take over some of the roadways that are actually TxDOT. So we can at least give you some of those ideas that we don't know why the city is actually doing this.
And we want to hear your breakdown, too.
Oh, no, I'm going to give you the numbers
Okay.
breakdown.
Okay.
Okay, so again, I'm not making any of this up. All of this is public knowledge and it's on the city's website. But in the 129 pages of Burnett Road in North Lamar, I did see that TxDOT they own all the segment of North Lamar that's in this. So TxDOT owns that, okay? TxDOT also owns the segment from 183 to Mopac of Burnett Road. So where the Domain is and where the Kramer Station, that area and all that kind of stuff. So to me, I'm thinking, why are we paying for something that really isn't ours to pay for? You know, TxDOT could come over and say, we're not doing this. And then if we do it, we're going to be assuming maintenance of it. We got to pay for it somehow. So how we're going to pay for that is our monthly utility bill. Everybody, when they pay their utility bill, if you look at it, you're going to see a transportation usage fee. And that fee is going to go up 30 or 40 cents a year. That doesn't sound like a lot, but y'all, it never goes away. Right now I'm paying $10 a month and it never goes away.
And never goes down.
No. So also, what's interesting is Capital Metro is a big part of the deal. And when we pay a sales tax in the city of Austin, part of that money goes to Cap Metro. Again, we're going to be putting in covered areas for bus people. We're going to be putting in benches and all that kind of stuff. And to me, I got to thinking, why are we paying for Capital Metro stuff? This is kind of double dipping, I think. So I had an issue with that, but we will be paying for furniture at the bus stops. And we will be doing work. All of the 360 work is under the jurisdiction of TxDOT. They have a study coming out at the end of December that will outline what their plans are. So if we give money to the city with this prop, that money is theirs. And TxDOT could say, this is our baby. This is what we're doing. And really, I hope what TxDOT sees is overpasses on 360. That would make for a true thoroughfare.
Yes.
And just no interruption of traffic. So again, and none of the stuff on the city's plan includes overpasses. It includes long left turn lanes, like if you go out on I-35 up by IKEA. If you've never driven that, go drive it, but make sure you're very, very, very alert because it'll throw you off guard. So, but that's what they're planning on for some of the intersections on 360. The long left turns where you're actually, like you're driving in Europe, you'll be on the opposite side of the road, and it's so I'd recommend a field trip to IKEA to see that, okay?
And there is a breakdown of some kinds on the city website. I guess it's not really broken down. I think Roger Falk did it in the detailed memorandum that's on the website, which is
HonestTransportationSolutions.com.
There you go. That has a detailed analysis, as I was saying to the bike lane people. Go see what's in this plan for the bike lanes, then go find out what is normally being built and what is planned for being built, compare the pricing. So let me just go through this thing because this is critical. This is a standalone document. So I prepared this document, which I'm going to read tomorrow at a meeting. And so I apologize that sometimes it says vote no, and you keep hearing me say vote no, but that's just how it goes. It's critical to tear apart the mayor's and the PAC's repeated assertions that the $56 number, the $5 a month number, is a true statement, and that we are the ones creating confusion, and we are the liars. So, let me read this memo real quick. My name's John Goldstone, I'm a taxpayer. Quick history, a few of us came together last year and shockingly killed the museum quality Travis County Courthouse bond tax by 1,037 votes. And it turns out that voting does matter. That for the rest of my life, voting is going to matter. We all have another decision to make this November, the $720 million mobility bond. Every household in the city of Austin, including mine, has to pay it back with our property tax bills every year for 20 years. We borrowers rely on our elected officials to give us the information we need to make a borrowing decision. We even trust our elected officials to give us true information during a legitimate, fair, transparent, and open process so that we can all make this very large borrowing decision. Well, our city's process has failed us, and 4 big deceptions are what I'm going to talk about. 4 big lies. Remember, most importantly, if the process is bad, wrong, or corrupt, we must vote no. It's an easy decision. The City of Austin, in the Greg Canale memo dated June 22nd, 2016 to council, he's one of the staffers, started using the phrase tax impact as a means of showing what the tax impact would be to the owner of a $250,000 home. This number, $56, then appeared numerous times in the Statesman, Community Impact, and Austin Monitor as it related to the $720 million bond. During the public discussions and documentation at council, the same number was used by the mayor, council members, and city staff. Additionally, we have further resources from the city with their new voter information brochure, and they have a bond calculator on there, which, by the way, we asked for about 6 years ago. So big lie number one. The $56 number has been attached to the $720 million. It is actually only for $480 million, as has been stated by Ben Ware, has been stated by the Canale memo, and at the third reading of the bond. But it is deceptive, to say the least. So in other words, using their numbers, it should be 1.5 times the $56. So they have attached $56 to $720 million, and then they go, it's only for $480 million, and I'll detail that in a second. So that number should be $84, and we're lucky in this situation. The fractions work perfectly. 2/3 of it's $480 million, 1/3 of it's $240 million. $56, 50% more is 84. We're lucky. We don't have to use fractions. It's great. But this is the first, biggest, and fatal deception. This is what the constituents of council and city council itself saw prior to the first and second readings on August 11th, 2016, the third reading on August 18th, 2016, and that is what the constituents now see in the website info and the city's bond calculator. They've doubled down on this deception, including Mayor Adler's myth-dispelling speech tour on September 28th, 29th, 2016. He called my fellow taxpayers and I, well, liars, as reported by Ben Ware, September 29th, 2016. This is from the Ben Ware article. Mayor Steve Adler lashed back Wednesday at unnamed critics who have knocked his $720 million transportation bond proposition, saying in a midday speech that they have misrepresented the tax impact of the bonds and details of the underlying road projects. When you get emails or see blogs that say awful things about this bond and say, that can't be true, it probably isn't, Adler said at an Austin Board of Realtors forum, a very friendly forum for him, by the way. Those who have been attacking the plan, he continues, saying an associated tax increase will be much larger than Adler and other supporters have said, are part of a breed of eternal skeptics who have held back progress in Austin, the mayor said. Adler stood by the less than $5 a month figure. If you get a contradictory answer than that, that is not true. That's him calling us liars. Additionally, not included in this figure, or in anyone's figures for that matter, is the required increase in the transportation fee, as was mentioned earlier, to maintain these smart corridors, as detailed in a memo from Mark Ott to council. So we're always relying on the information that we get from the city. Since this is a fee, the mayor can claim he is not lying, as it is not included in his tax bill impact. Number of $56. So you can say, well, it's not a tax, it's a fee. That smells. So we start seeing these bad smells. Big lie number two. The second big deception is that this tax impact is what a $250,000 homeowner will have to pay annually in additional property taxes to pay back this loan. It is only the impact of 2.25 cents. Now I know this is where it goes in the woods, and I've been told to stay out of the woods, but that's where we're going. In this case, the official proponents will be able to truthfully say that the tax impact of 2.25 cents will be $56 to the $250,000 homeowner. That's a true statement because they have defined tax impact to not be the repayment cost. It's just, if we raise it by 2.25 cents, by definition, it's $22.50 per 100,000. However, using the city advertised 2.25 cents and using a total taxable figure in the city of Austin from 150 billion, it's 115 billion total taxable property. This is from Greg Canale. The tax revenue generated will not cover the $57 million annual mortgage bond payment to the bondholders. It only generates $25 million. You need $57 million, but it's only going to generate $25 million. Less than half of the mortgage bond payment on the fully funded $720 million. Additionally, the city has created further confusion and direct contradiction to the 2.25 cents and a $56 number in its voter information brochure. This brochure contains the same $56 number, but critically on page 8, a quote. Based upon market conditions as of the date of this ordinance and using taxable assessed values for the 2015 tax year, without adjustment for anticipated growth, if the bonds and notes are authorized, the estimated total tax rate of the city is expected to be approximately 0.5339 per 100, which represents an increase of 7.5 cents. So instead of the $22.50, which equals their 56, it's really $75 per 100,000 of value. That's in their brochure that they just put out. So in one place they say $56, in the other place they're saying a number that is way higher. It's $187.50, $187.50 for a $250,000 house. So in any event, so Mr. Mayor, I have to ask this question. Which number is correct? The $56 or the $187.50 number? Who is putting out the myths, Mr. Mayor, and creating the confusion? I don't understand it, okay? Which number's right? You're promising us this, and then your thing says 7.5 cents, which equals $187.50. Big lie number 3. The third big deception, and one of the ugliest of them all, is the statement reported by Ben Ware in articles August 19th and October 10th, and from city staff at the August 18th third reading, and the mayor for the October 10th Ben Ware article, that when the final $240 million is issued, it was misstated as $250 million in the article, other bonds will have been paid off, so the tax impact to a $250,000 home will be zero. Let me repeat. The repayment cost for a $240 million loan will be zero. It is as though you've paid off an $800 monthly car payment on the same day that you buy a home that has an $800 mortgage, so your lender tells you the impact is zero. Or using the city's logic, if we were paying off $480 million of other bonds prior to selling these bonds, the tax impact, assuming the same interest rate of the bonds you're paying off, would be zero. So they're doing the shell game of, since you're paying this off, your tax impact is zero. Well, this is completely misleading, deceptive, and a shell game lie by the city. If you think about it, the council members who supported the bond language on the third reading, mayor and city staff, are either 1, incompetent, in that they stupidly forgot to put the full impact to a borrower in the number that turned out to be the $56 number, or 2, they intentionally knew and misled the public throughout the entire process that the $56 tax impact number was not the actual payment number to an owner of a $250,000 property. So when anybody has a chance to talk to the mayor, you should ask him, is that $56 the repayment cost? Because he's going to say, no, it's the tax impact of a 2.25 cent. It's like saying, is that a stop sign? Yes, that's a stop sign. They're ignoring 1/3 of the total bonds. Big deception number 4, and I'll hurry it up. Here's the big item requires you to concentrate. What we've done is, and I did this in 2013, the affordable housing bond, when I went to the city's website early in the process, prior to the informational sessions where the city tries to sell the public on these bonds and we get to ask questions, I found that the only financial disclosure of the repayment costs of the taxpayers, the borrowers, the homeowners, and the renters was, no increase in the property tax rate is anticipated as a result of this bond issuance. I do not have the web address, but I have a PDF of the brochure. They had put no number at all in their written disclosures as to the repayment amount for this bond. I alerted the city council, I alerted the city staff, I asked what kind of transparency is this, what kind of truth in lending is this? I got silence, but I thought I had warned them. Well, here we are again, and by the way, it appears that we are not the only taxpayers in Central Texas being lied to by confusion, misdirection, or omission. Hays County has one, $250 million, and their only disclosure is that their credit rating will not be affected. In the Bastrop Independent School District, somehow they actually have a negative number. In other words, your taxes are going to go down when you increase the tax rate. So that one's a weird one. And then in Smithville Independent School District, they put out a number of $209 per 100,000 of value, and the number that we came up with using a full amortization at full funding was more than twice that at $443, over 2 times what they were telling the public. It seems that these few identified city, county, and school districts that are allowed to issue bonds to be paid back with other people's money, your property tax money, all of ours, feel that they need to deceive the borrowers, the taxpayers, the owners, and the renters in order to get the votes they need for these giant loans to pass. In our case, I have to ask the mayor and Austin City Council, again, the 7 council members who supported it, Didn't I warn you to be truthful and transparent so that I would not be able to accuse you of lying by confusion, misdirection, or omission? And that's my citizens communication from August 18th, 2016. So the day of their third reading, I did a citizens communication. So in any event, when you buy a home and get a mortgage, you get something which is required by federal law called a good faith estimate. It shows your actual interest rate, your payment, and if you don't lock it, when you get to the closing, if it's way higher, you don't have to close. If you lock it, they have to give it to you. We don't have that option here. And so in any event, I have calculated what I call a good faith estimate, because I'm willing to stand up, hand it to anybody, I called Fidelity this morning. I go, how does this sound? I talked to a bond friend who runs some bond funds and said, this is how I'm doing. How does this look? How does this come out? So I'm happy to receive criticism from this, and I did get some criticism that potentially it's an interest-only payback, but that makes it even worse for the city, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here and use the one that I did. And I did the same thing for Hayes County and Bastrop ISD, but using the City of Austin assumptions. So what I did was, you take the $720 million bond, I used Greg Canale's 5%, amortized over 20 years, 2 payments per year of principal and interest. Each half-year payment is $28 million, total of about $57 million. Okay, so we know that our total payment of principal and interest in a year is $57 million to totally pay it back over 20 years when it's fully funded. So then you look at the total taxable property in the City of Austin. I mentioned it before, it's $115 billion. We take a $100,000 sliver, we divide it by that $115 billion, we come up with a fraction. We take that fraction and we multiply it times the $57 million payment, and that will be the amount of taxes that are associated with a $100,000 sliver. We don't have to discuss medians, we don't have to discuss average, we don't have to discuss mean, we don't have to discuss anything. Anybody can go to the website, Travis CAD, pull up their property, multiply it times that, and when you do it on the way I did it, it comes out to $50 per 100,000 of value, which comes out to $125 for a $250,000 house. Again, they came up with $56, $5 a month. The city underestimated the repayment cost, as they are only showing about 45% of the repayment cost in its $56 number. Much more real number that I'm willing to stand up and talk about to amortize it, because you got to pay back that $720 million.
And John, that includes renters too as well.
Renters never vote. I wish those people would vote, because this is the one time that renters have actual control over their rent, because every increase, I'm a landlord also, and if you get a tax increase, it goes right into the rent.
Right.
Okay, so in any event, if we could get renters to vote and vote against this thing and understand that a bond is a loan that's going directly into the rent, lower your rent, vote no, we would probably be able to defeat this thing. In any event, finally, with these 4 big myths or omissions or misdirections or incompetent communications or lies, one of which I would consider fatal, no matter what the reason behind it, that's the no tax impact for the final $240 million statement, a complete failure to follow any kind of truth in lending standard, a failure to fully disclose the cost, which for all the numbers discussed in this memo is actually 3 times the amount due to the plans for the corridor being incomplete. As we said, it's actually 3 times higher. It's going to be another $1.5 billion. And a refusal to have scheduled public informational sessions for this bond, we can only conclude that the process has failed. We have a duty to vote no. We don't even have to look at the merits of the bond, although we have. But it's not relevant when they deceive the borrowers, the taxpayers, the owners and the renters of the city. It's a bit sad, because I regularly ride a bike and I like bike lanes, but no matter what might be in this giant boondoggle that we each might like and want, we have to vote no because of this broken system of deceptively selling bonds to the borrowers. So in any event, that is my memo, my standalone memo on the numbers. And you can put it on your website and anybody can contact me. It's all of the links are there, from the Canale memo to the other items that are on there, the video from the third reading, et cetera.
Thank you for that information. Greg, did you have anything you need to contribute to this as well?
I think we
The
covered.
numbers man?
Yeah, well, John did a great job
He
breaking
did.
that down. There's not a whole lot more that I can add to that on the numbers. I'm more of a shoot from the hip guy. I just think this thing stinks all the way up. I don't trust it at all. It looks to me, you see this all the time where bureaucrats will sugarcoat the numbers, try and get a bond passed. And when I first saw that $56 number, I was like, there's no way that's right. You see it time and time again all across the state.
Well, to me, it's just fundamentally wrong to have a proposition from 6-1 hoisted onto 10-1,
Yeah.
and then we have to vote on it. It's just not right. Now, it would be different if 10-1 went back and took a look at it before it went out, but just to take it, here it is, and that's it. To me, that's just not a way to
And
do
the bundling
business.
of it. And I think had they had a better input of it,
Well-
I think we would have had a different bundling. I think they were kind of bullied into how it was going to be packaged. And, I mean, or Houston is a perfect example. She has nothing in her district, nothing. And it's just, the point of 10-1, I worked hard getting that passed too. The point of that was to get representation, and now I want resources. I want 1/10 of the money to come to my district. So I just think, I had that idea that we'd have representation, but we'd also have resources. And I think now we're seeing that once again, there are people whose hands are still in a lot of these pockets, and we need them to get out, and we need them to share the resources
That is
and the representation. And I think that's why we're here, and that's why we get involved in these things. We have nothing. We do have a lot to gain. We'll save on our property tax, and we'll stay
true.
in the
Not really
city of
gaining
Austin.
any.
No, but we'll make it so we
saving.
can
Holding on
live
to
here.
Save.
right.
It's just silly to be spending what we're spending. I mean, we paid our house off last year, and now I'm looking at tax payments that are about going to be what my mortgage was. And, I can see why a lot of people on fixed incomes just throw up their hands and say it's not worth it. And honestly, we should not be having people move because of that. That is a wrong reason to move.
It really is. Well, we just truly appreciate everybody coming, and the website was Honest Transportation Solutions.com. So everybody needs to really go there. And don't forget, early voting is October 24th. You'll need to make sure that you're registered to vote and so forth, because I believe tomorrow's the last day to do so. So please go out and vote. And everything that was said tonight, I'm going to sum it up. I think we should, when we vote and look at this bond, it should be HE double hockey stick, capital N, capital O, exclamation point. Hell no to vote for Proposition 1. No, do not vote for it. Thank you. Mike, you have some announcements?
The one thing, I would let people know that it's going to be at the very bottom of the ballot.
It's going to be at the very bottom of the ballot. Go down there and say, hell to the no.
Do not vote. Do not vote for Proposition 1.